Pam, you've been mentoring poets and writers now for 10 years, even over 10 years. What is the difference between poetry coaching and your workshops?
The poetry coaching is a mentoring concept. And what's terrific about mentoring is that it's one-on-one. And so some poets at certain points in their life, especially if they're bringing a manuscript together or they've got a bunch of poems that they'd like some help with specifically, that's what I can do. So over a period of time, we work on batches of poems or, as I said, a manuscript. Whereas the workshop means to build a community of writers. And that's literally what we are. We sit around the table and we become a community week after week after week and become stronger and learn to trust one another. And that's a great thing for any writer.
Who's a likely candidate for your workshops, Pam? Are there different levels of writers that are welcome, or is it strictly just beginners, or, the opposite? It's, just strictly for the advanced?
But this particular workshop is most especially important for those who are at the more beginning stages of writing and who are really looking for not just a community of writers, and I want to stress that because that's really more than anything what this is, but they're looking for rigorous, honest, thoughtful, but also kind responses to their work. And that's what I provide. That's how I set this whole thing up. That's what I need. I at this stage of the game, I have two workshops that I go, peer workshops that I attend myself. I have always been in workshops because I find that it's, if it's the right one, it's incredibly helpful with new work as it comes along. It's not that I'm developing something here that's just an idea that I don't understand or don't know about. I mean, I have a lifetime of writing in workshops like this where it's proven to me time and time again that it's what helps poets go forward with their work.
Do you have any advice for, the beginner poets coming into a workshop who must be frightened? I know myself, I've got some poetry that I think I would be nervous coming into a group of people that I'm unfamiliar with and opening up to this new world.
Right. Yeah, and you know what? It's okay to be frightened, and if you weren't frightened, you probably aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing with the writing, which is really putting something of yourself into it. If yourself was not into it, then it probably wouldn't be a scary experience. And I have to say that even at my age and my experience and what's behind me in terms of poetry, I'm always nervous when I bring new work to a workshop. I'm never not nervous. I have learned over time that if it's the right workshop, meaning I can trust the people to not savage the work, which I think is one thing that really worries people who are just starting out, is that you'll bring something that you've worked on. You don't know whether it's good or not. That's why you're bringing it. Mm-hmm. So you're unsure about something to begin with. So you sit down with, as you say, in the beginning, a group of strangers. I mean, anything could happen, right? Well, it's true, anything could happen, but I'm there. My job is to make sure that what happens is the best for you in terms of your work. And so if you're coming to the workshop sincerely wanting help, that's what you'll get.
Pam, what's the difference between a poetry workshop and a writer's group?
I think it depends on who's running either one, first of all. Just any group of any nature that is led by someone is going to, the configuration and the tone of it is going to be set by the person who runs it. So I can only speak for myself. A writer's group is more, I believe, a social affair. Not that a workshop is not a social affair. Of course it is.
Do you get coffee?
Yeah, I slice up oranges. I make cookies. I make all sorts of stuff, and a fire in the winter, and it's pretty wonderful. Mm. So I think a writer's group is more tuned to encouraging folks to write in a general way. And I think from there it really depends. I think some are heavy in terms of reading and sharing what they're reading. I mean, and then, of course, there are reading groups. Whereas my workshop centers around folks bringing work that they're working on that they want help with, that, a poem will be in a draft form, but it will not be so new that it can't sustain criticism. And I mean criticism, positive criticism, and all criticism, tempered, of course, by me. I'm always very careful with what happens around the table. The idea that ultimately what I want is for each person to be able to leave the evening with something good having been said about their work, so that they can take it home, open up their folder, and dive right back into it and start a revision. And so that's my deepest intention in running a workshop, is to help people go forward with their work.
What's an average amount of people that will be attending your workshops? I mean, is it something where there's 3 people, or one night it's 10, or is it? Do you have? How does that work?
That's a good question too.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting, but will there be different faces every time we sit down to this workshop? Because I think that would be a little scary when you start to get comfortable with your group, and then all of a sudden there's a new face.
Right. Excellent question. I generally run workshops for 8 weeks, and the limit is generally 8 participants. Anything over that becomes really untenable in terms of just the timing. We start at about 7, sometimes 7:30, but usually I try to start around 7 and end around 9:30. So in that 2.5 hours, if we've got 8 participants, you can see that, time goes pretty quickly in terms of what we do, but any more than 8 would be just very difficult. And no, the 8 are the same for that 8-week session. No, it would be awful to have different people every single night. That would really be difficult. I mean, some people might enjoy that, but that's not the way I run it. And then I usually have a week's hiatus, sometimes not, and start another 8-week session. And very often what people do, of course, is come back, just keep going with it. And so, but not always. Someone might be going to the south of France, which I wish I could go with them, but, that sort of thing, and so that they're not there for the next 8-week session, so that there might be a new face, so that every 8 weeks the configuration changes slightly.
What a great way to also make new friends who are interested in the same things and maintaining relationships after that, even if they don't come back after, and into a new session for whatever reason, but it just sounds lovely.
Absolutely. It's exactly, precisely, perfectly what I would like to have happen with a workshop. That people can, whether they come back or not, and of course I hope they do, but if they can't or don't for some reason, that they will have people that they can speak with. You'll run into someone, especially in a small, community like this, although, folks can come from an hour's radius, an hour's drive. I figure that's a long drive, but they can still do it. But, the poetry world is a small world. You'll go to readings and you'll run into people that you've gotten to know around the table. It's terrific. And it satisfies one of the biggest problems with writing poetry is the isolation, or writing anything of any sort. You need to have your space. You need to have quiet, usually. But then you also just as desperately need to be together with other people who know what you're talking about and what the struggles are and what your goals are, which is, maybe it's to be published, maybe it's not to be published, but it's to get to be a better writer.